It has been a very busy week for the West Virginia Mountaineer football team and for myself as I'm back here finally after a few days away. Thanks to my co-host Jonathan here for filling in the gap for me while I'm gone and doing a couple shows here on the channel. But we are back to do this live edition of Couz's Corner here tonight. We're going to talk about the football commits that Rich Rodriguez has been able to get in the transfer portal these last few days. And we will talk a little hoops too, a little bit about it's kind of been quiet on the hoops front the last few days. We're going to talk about that as well. It's kind of been the opposite from what's going on in football. So, but let's go ahead and Jonathan, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, well, it's good to have you back. This is Couz's Corner for a reason, so good to see you back. I don't know that you're excited. Vacation's always tough to come back from. Never really much fun. But I don't think that to my knowledge, I don't think I tore anything up. I don't think I broke anything. Not. The channel still works, and so just glad to keep it rolling. But good to see you.
Yep. Thanks, brother. And I appreciate you holding the fort down for me while I was out. Did a great job, by the way. Matter of fact, I better not let you do too many. You might take my job from me.
Yeah. I don't think you have to worry about anything, but yeah, it's always good to rest and relax and good to have some stuff keep flowing while you're gone. And so my pleasure, my friend.
I appreciate it, brother. And do want to remind for those of you watching on X, you can come over to the YouTube channel, Couz's Corner. Once the show's over, subscribe. Like the videos over there. Check out what we've done if you haven't done that yet. And also just, support what we're doing. Support, Jonathan and I do a show every week called the Golden Blue Breakdown Show. Check it out. We usually get it up around Thursdays about now we didn't do one last week for obvious reasons, but we normally get it up around Thursday about midday, something like that. And then Jonathan and I both have Twitter handles. I'm at Couz206 and he's at Jonathan K. Martin. It's Jonathan with no H in the front. Check us out. And then we have the Golden Blue Breakdown Show has its own page called at GB Breakdown _ so you can check us out there as well. But before we get into the show, I do have to do something I haven't done in a little bit, and that's give a shout out to my channel sponsors here. The first one, I'll do one and then I'll do the other one later in the show. But the first one I want to give a shout out to is our good friends over at Couz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, your personal injury or medical malpractice attorneys in the state of West Virginia and Virginia. Since 1931, the attorneys at Couz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Couz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer. Your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right. Thank you for letting us get through the housekeeping and helping us keep the lights on. We ask that as we go through the show, keep the chat rolling. Thank you for all those leaving comments in the chat section so far. And even if you're watching this on the replay, the comments really help out. And so do the thumbs ups and the subscriptions and all that. But Jonathan, let's go ahead and dive in, man. Let's go ahead and talk about these commits that West Virginia has gotten over the last few days while I've been away. And the first one we're going to talk about is we probably won't spend a ton of time on this just because it's a position that doesn't get too much, doesn't get a whole lot of attention. But we do want to talk about it a little bit, and that's Cade Hensley, the kicker from Coastal Carolina. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, just somebody, again, not that's going to get a ton of fanfare, but somebody that is going to come in, 1 year left out of Coastal Carolina, somebody that's pretty much going to, in all likelihood, shut the door on your kicker position. They were looking for somebody. He's a veteran. He's got one season left, 34 of 43, long of 49, did that twice last season, 26 of 26 on extra points. Because I think that's probably field goals obviously are extremely important, but you want to be accurate when you're on those extra points, especially from that 30 to 35-yard range, which he was. Again, not somebody that's going to get a ton of fanfare, but somebody that can come in and they can plug in and feel comfortable with. So, yeah, good, solid pickup. Not going to wow anybody just because kickers generally don't do that.
Right.
But when it's all said and done, could be somebody that's a very nice pickup for sure.
Yeah, and let's hope he can keep the streak going. West Virginia had a streak here of some really good kickers of late. I mean, last year it was Michael Hayes. The
Yeah.
last 2 years, really. Then before that, it was Casey Legg, and then before that, it was you'll have to remind me who it was, but it was another really solid kicker that we had. I mean,
Yeah.
the list goes on and on and on. Hopefully, Cade Hensley's the next guy in that line.
Yeah, and I think so. And Hayes performed very well last season. And again, the kickers just they're kind of those you only really hear a lot about them when they're missing kicks, and so you don't hear a ton about them. But this is somebody that's productive, that's veteran. He's been around down at Coastal Carolina, and somebody that they feel really good about. And so the kicker special teams position probably closing the door on that.
Yeah. And I hopefully he's their guy, because I know they did lose one or two guys in the portal. But I'm going to assume it's because those guys probably didn't figure they were going to get a ton of playing time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say they're finished.
Yep. Next position we're going to talk about, the next pickup is this is a big one, literally and figuratively. Malik Agbo, the offensive lineman from Texas, 6'4", 300 pounds. I went to Pro Football Focus. He hasn't played a ton of football at Texas in his 3 or 4 years there.
Yeah,
he's played about 170 snaps. I don't know the history behind that, Jonathan. Maybe you do. What can you tell us about Malik Agbo?
Yeah, entered the portal again. You said it. Another big lineman from 6'4", 300. His phone blew up immediately when he went in the portal. West Virginia, Cal. This is somebody, Couz, that is extremely talented. Maybe didn't play a ton at Texas, but I don't think we need to get into the talent level that Texas produces year in and year out. So that's a crowded room to make room in. 4-star out of high school. So again, plenty of talent there. Texas, USC, Oklahoma, Oregon, Michigan you name it, they offered Malik Agbo out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to like here. I will say he was a better pass blocker during his time at Texas. Actually reached, I think it was 73.9 on the PFF grade passing. But he was about low to mid 50s on the run. Because here's one thing that even though it was semi-limited production, 0 sacks and 43 passing attempts. So somebody that they feel comfortable that they can maybe plug in. Be curious to see, for me, I think the plan is you get all these guys in if you think are talented enough to play, and let camp kind of dictate where the next step goes.
Right.
But you've got some guys here all of a sudden that with Josh Asosa, who just came in, Michael Clay, who just came in, because they're still looking to bring other players in on visits in the coming weeks.
Yep.
So curious to see where it all lands here, but he's experienced, versatile, played tackle, played guard, so they can swap him in and out there. A lot to like here, and certainly the coaches feel good. So I think his semi-lack of playing time at Texas was just due to a crowded room.
Right.
But he is really, really talented.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you talked about his PFF grades. He has his pass blocking grades every year of his career has been a 70 or higher. And it was 69.8 technically in 2022 as a freshman, but still I'm saying 70. It's close enough. And in 2023, he had 131 snaps where he put up a 70.6 grade in pass blocking. Like you said, his run blocking has been much lower. It's been in the mid 50s. But again, he still has 2 years left of eligibility. So he's going to get better. You put him in that offensive line room with Jack Bicknell Jr., an experienced offensive line coach who has coached at both the college and NFL level. I really like this guy. And again, it's bodies. You need bodies in that room. You need experienced bodies in that room, and they're bringing guys in. Even if he didn't play a ton of games, he got to practice every single day.
Yeah.
Against some of the best defensive linemen in college football at Texas. Look at the types of defensive linemen Texas is putting in the league every year.
Yeah.
And this guy got to practice against him every single day. So you can't tell me he's not going to come in and be able to compete at West Virginia, in my opinion. Will he be a starter day one? I have no idea. But I feel like he'll come in and compete for a starting spot at least.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And again, I talked about this. You're seeing other players come in. You've got a Will Osteen coming in, Jalen Caldwell come in, a Carson Lee
Mm-hmm.
from Mississippi State come in. So and that's in addition to the guys that they have already brought into this room. So listen, you can never have enough of these guys. We're talking 6'4", 6'5", 300, 320.
Yep.
These are some big guys that are coming in, some experienced. Look, some of these SEC, Carson Lee is another offensive lineman coming for a visit, Mississippi State. So, you've got a lot of experience from some pretty talented programs and conferences. Bring as many as you can in, and let's see how it plays out.
Yep. Another position of need was wide receiver, and there actually are 2 wide receivers that have committed to the Mountaineers in the past few days. The first one is Justin Smith from South Carolina State, FCS program. What can you tell us about Justin Smith?
Yeah, entered the portal. I think it was about a week or so ago, April 16th. Made a visit to West Virginia, and his recruiting took off pretty quick. A lot of schools involved. 1 year left. 3 seasons he played at South Carolina State, and I think what's most interesting, Couz, for me here is his production took off with every year. It elevated a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So every year he got better. 54 catches, 749 yards, 4 touchdowns last season.
Mm-hmm.
So overall for the 3 seasons, I think it was 81 catches, well, maybe almost 1,200 yards. But the bulk of that production was last year. And so every single year he got better and better. And I'll tell you one thing that I thought was pretty interesting while we're talking PFF grades, because he was a 71.8 PFF grade as a blocker.
Yep.
Extremely, extremely important in Rich Rod's offense. And so if you can get a combination of the offensive production that he gave you every single year and got better at, and combine that with grading out pretty well as a blocker, there's a lot to like here as well. And certainly Rich Rod felt the same way.
Yeah, and over 1,300 snaps of experience. Again, I know some fans are going to say, yeah, but it was against the FCS competition. Still, 1,300 snaps is a good experience. He put up big numbers. He has shown that he can perform.
Yeah,
I like the fact that he's 6'1", 190, so he's he's decent size for a wideout. You'd like to he's not a 6'4", 6'5" guy, but I think he's at a size where he can probably give you a guy who can play multiple positions. If you want to put him in a slot, if you want to put him wide, out wide, whatever. Now he played out wide pretty much almost his entirety at South Carolina State, but it doesn't mean that Rich Rod won't decide to use him in other places.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that Smith Brown and who we're going to talk about next, another receiver, both of these guys give you some speed. And when you talk about Rich Rod noted that he wants the receiver room, all positions, but the receiver room to get quicker, to get faster, to get more athletic, and this is a step in that direction.
Agreed. I like the pickup, man. I mean, he had some. It's my understanding he had some pretty talented schools after him, and if you take that into account, I mean, he's a good football player.
Yeah, and I realize again that the not just here with Smith Brown, but throughout different positions, FCS, South Carolina State, Jacksonville State. But again, West Virginia just took a wide receiver from North Carolina. So to me, you have to look at the totality of the situation, and you're seeing a quality mix of players from different programs. And obviously, I'm going to lean towards trusting Rich Rodriguez, the offensive staff, the defensive staff, because they let some guys go or cut some guys loose, but they elected to go in a different direction with a lot of players. And so if they feel that these coming in are going to better serve the program, as of now, you have to trust their judgment on it.
Agreed. And it goes back to a conversation you and I had a couple weeks ago, Jonathan. He's looking to win now, man. Not every guy he's bringing in are seniors, but majority of them are.
Yeah.
And even the ones that aren't seniors are guys like the one, we talked about Agbu before. He's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, right? But he has played some football at Texas, so he's experienced. He's if he wants guys who are able to win now, right? Who
Yep.
can potentially get on the field now, compete for snaps now. But there's a balance there where they're also bringing in some guys. Okay, this guy might be able to play now,
Yeah.
but probably can't start now, right? But we can develop him, and by next year, or the third year in the program, he might be a starter. There's balance here at these positions. With Smith being one of the guys who has that, he's a senior. He'll come in with his one more year of eligibility, so he fits the mold of one of those guys that if this guy has he apparently feels like he can come in and compete for playing time today, or he likely wouldn't have made this move.
Yep, agreed.
Before we get any further, I do want to give a shout out to my other channel sponsor here. You see them in the top, I guess, right corner of your screen. It's Appalachia Digital. They're the folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. Go check them out. If you want to start yourself a brand new website, or if you already have a site and you want to, get found easier on Google, go check them out. AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. Let them know I sent you. And they will do the same for you that they did for me, and build you a wonderful website. So go check them out. And I want to thank them for supporting what we're doing here at Couz's Corner. Let's go ahead and we're going to get some comments, Jonathan, and then we'll get back to
Sure.
I know what the one everybody probably wants to talk about is coming up here shortly. But let's go ahead and get to some comments here. See, I don't even know where to start. We got a bunch coming in.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give Kelly McCourt, Danny Ball in the house. WVU is life. Yeti 304. Who else we got? Son of Skeeter 9917. Cool name, by the way. Curtis D316 in the house. Shaq, who's a VIP channel member here, says, I'm late. What did I miss? Not a ton, Shaq, but anything you missed, brother, you can always go back and check it out. We were actually a little late getting started, so you may not have missed as much as you think, to be honest. And I apologize, by the way, for those who might have been waiting around for the show to start. Me just getting back from vacation, I've had a lot to do today, so was not able to get on here right at 8 o'clock. But see who else we got in the house. Shaq's still here. Thank you, Shaq, brother. We got Stanley Metz Jr. in the house. Daniel Gigax in the house. What's up, Daniel? Scott McBride. The problem is, Scott's got a good point here. He says, the problem is it doesn't mean they will stay. A lot of guys left, and Rich Rod picked them and thought they were all great. Yeah, I mean, not every guy's going to stay, and I think that's another reason that Rich Rod's going out and getting guys who can play now, because he understands that there's no guarantee you're going to have these guys in a year anyway. So development is not totally dead, but it's just taking a back seat a little bit to guys who can come in and play now.
Yeah, and it's interesting to kind of look at it. Most of these guys that Rich has brought in are 1 year. But because I talked about this on one of the shows, ironically enough, while you were on vacation, is that the hope with these guys that have 2 and 3 years left is that you can get them into the program, get them familiar with the program. Maybe you build a little bit of trust with them, some communication, a bond with them, and then you can maybe restructure. That's the world we live in, restructure an agreement going forward. But I think the first step is just getting them here.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed.
And so a very common theme is 1 year left, 1 year remaining. But they have done a few that are 2 years and a couple that are 3 years, with the hope of just latching onto them and just create that bond with them. And in another year, because it happens every single year, you restructure a deal and see how it plays out. But maybe at that point, you have the upper hand instead of trying to just go find somebody else. So I understand trying to weigh both sides of it.
Yep. Agreed. Stanley Metz with a good comment here. He says, we lost a lot of talent, but we also was lagging behind in speed, mental toughness, and et cetera. Seems Rich Rod is doing a good job addressing those issues as best he can. I think he is, Stanley. I think, you take in the fact that, the NIL money West Virginia has, which is not terrible, but also not great, right? It's probably middle of the pack amongst the Power Four, I would say, and even in the Big 12, probably middle of the pack. You take that, you take the different philosophy, the different culture he's trying to build than what Coach Brown was doing. Of course, there's going to be a lot of attrition. And I think, a lot of fans have, I don't want to say a lot, but there are a number of fans who've hit the panic button a little bit because of the number of players that have left the program. But I think it's just today's college football, today's college sports in general now. Players leave, players come in, year out. Now, obviously, the coaching change made it worse, but it's going to happen at every program regardless of who the coach is.
Yeah, and I think West Virginia made a little bit more noise, Couz, because it all kind of happened within one day or 2 days. Whereas if you kind of looked, everything else kind of spanned out over, 2, 3, 4 weeks. I certainly don't know what the total number is, but again, we have talked about this here. West Virginia just kind of happened to be the headliner, but every single school was going to run into a situation where they had to trend down. So just happened to be that Rich in West Virginia kind of led the way in the news media to as they got down to a certain number.
Yeah,
but everybody's going to have to do it.
Exactly. WVU is life says, and he earlier said WVU had no speed. He was agreeing with Stanley, and then he went on to say, and WVU didn't tackle well, didn't blitz well, and didn't cause turnovers. I agree with you on 2 of those. Didn't blitz well. They blitz, but it didn't seem like they were able to get home and get to the quarterback enough and cause enough chaos. And then the turnovers part's a definite. I mean, they really have not done a good job of causing turnovers for several years now in that program for whatever reason, and which is one of the reasons they didn't win that many games. I think it was a huge part of it, and one of the reasons Jordan Leslie got fired about 3/4 of the way through the season.
Yep,
they were not forcing turnovers, and it was causing a lot of problems. And part of that was poor coverage on the back end. Part of that was, like you mentioned earlier, didn't blitz well. They didn't get home on quarterbacks enough. Now, was that lack of speed off the edge? Was that lack of technique? I don't know. I'm not the coach. I think it was a little bit of all the above, to be honest. And then the tackle, well, I don't want to speak for every season, but I know this past season, West Virginia was actually one of the highest graded teams in the country in tackling, according to Pro Football Focus. It was actually the one thing they did do well. Now, if you wanted to say they took bad angles or you wanted to say they misfit a lot of stuff, that's a different conversation because I think that happened. But as far as actually getting guys on the ground when they got to them, I think they did a pretty good job of that. But everything else around that, they struggled with, yes. What are your thoughts on that comment, Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree, and that's something that Rich Rod and now Zach Allen, defense coordinators, talked about. The defense had to improve. The speed, the athleticism had to improve. I do think the tackling was better last year on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, the struggles were well documented. Tackling did seem to get better last year, and you're right; those are the type of things that cost people their jobs. But I do think that it is a point of emphasis to get quicker, to get more athletic, to get faster. Going forward with Zach Alley and a new defensive scheme under Rich Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm. And you make a great point. WVU's life, Marshall had one DN that is had more sacks than our whole team. Well, yes, that's a great point, and it's not a good thing. But on the flip side of that, that young man was a stud, Mike Green. I think he went in the second round of the draft.
I think it was second round, but a lot of people had him as a first round mock draft. Yeah, he was really good. Yeah.
I actually voted for him on pretty much all of my All-American ballots that I had, or all of my award ballots that I cast as part of my membership with the Football Writers Association. I voted for that young man because I thought he deserved it. He was leading the country in just about every statistical category for his position. And I didn't think, obviously because he played at Marshall, he didn't get as much recognition as he probably should have. But that young man's going to make a lot of money playing football.
Yep, he was really good.
But your point still stands. For them to have one guy who had more sacks than West Virginia's team is not a good statistic, nonetheless. What's up, Skylar Slider KMK says Texas Tech in the house and can't wait for this football season. Lots of QBs going to be getting hit when they play Tech. You're probably right, but don't expect West Virginia to get hit a ton because they're going to go so daggone fast. It's going to be tough to hit them. But I do think Texas Tech should be a good team this year, no doubt.
That's a school that's done well in the portal.
They have. This is kind of going to be a put up or shut up year for Tech, in my opinion.
Yep, they've done well.
And Daniel Gigax makes a great point. Marshall's budget is a fraction of WVU's. They were still able to get and retain Mike Green, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Shaq says Couz had his vacation, brother, and Jonathan did great holding down the fort. Yeah, he did do a great job, and I had a great vacation. I pretty much tried my best to shut out everything related to anything work-related, anything even YouTube-related for a few days just because I needed that reset, and had a really good time, man. So thank you for asking. And yes, Jonathan did do a great job holding down the fort. Tosh Miller's in the house. It was a great show, Tosh. What he's referring to is I actually was in Las Vegas. Oops, I didn't mean to hit my mic. I was in Las Vegas for a few days and went to see AC/DC at Allegiant Stadium while I was there. And it was an awesome – and as you see, Tosh's profile photo is Angus Young from AC/DC. So I know he's a big AC/DC guy. And it was a great show, Tosh. You know, for Angus Young to do what he does at 70 years old, man, he had a guitar solo about 3/4 of the way through that show. I know he played for at least 20, 25 solid minutes straight, nonstop during that solo. Not even counting the rest of the show he had to play. So at 70, remarkable showman, man. Remarkable showman, remarkable guitar player. And of course, the rest of the band did well too. But we had a great time. College Football Express in the house says the cleaning house continues. And by the way, go check out that show over at, you have to put the name of the actual YouTube channel in the chat if you don't mind. College Football Express says the clearinghouse continues and some really decent portal additions late in the game. Hoping you guys have a great season with Rich Rod in charge. Thank you. I appreciate that. See, we got Bucky Robinette in the house. We've got, who else we got? Yep, it is really nice, Daniel. The Allegiant Stadium, the Raiders' new stadium, is where we were. Awesome stadium. Really a good place to go see a show. I'm assuming it's also a good place to see a football game. It's the layout of the stadium. It's easy to get in and out. It's easy to get to concessions. It's easy to get to bathrooms. Really, really nice place. And not to mention it's outdoors, but it's indoors. It has a roof over it. So it's really cool atmosphere. All right, let's go ahead and get back to the topic at hand, and that is the transfer portal. Let's go ahead and talk about the next wide receiver, Jonathan, that West Virginia got. This one, another, not an FCS player, an FBS player, but a G5 guy, and Jordan McCants from Jacksonville State. So he is very familiar with Coach Rodriguez. He's very familiar with Coach Nicewander and Coach the other receiver coach there. So what are your thoughts? Well, the tight ends coach, I guess. It was Coach Nicewander is the one who came from Jacksonville State, so he should be familiar with him. But what are your thoughts on Jordan McCants?
Yeah, they played 3 years at Jacksonville State, 5'11", 173. Would like to think, obviously, his ties with Rich Rodriguez and Ryan Garrett.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Nicewander is the tight ends coach. Garrett is the receivers coach. I had my names mixed up.
Yep, we'll give you that. Back from vacation. But yeah, the relationship with Rich Rodriguez obviously played a key role here. Last season, 15 catches, 146 yards. Probably not going to wow you, admittingly, but adds room or depth to the wide receiver room. Very familiar with the offense. And what was pretty neat about him is he worked up the depth chart each season. So when you talk about like Justin Smith-Brown, we talk about production increased every year. McCants is one of those guys that saw more and more action and more snaps every year. So moved up the depth chart, played outside receiver much, some in the slot, but he had over 500 career snaps, 422 of them last year. So kind of coming into his own. He's going to be a good special teams guy. Again, a lot like Smith-Brown, athletic, quick, can play outside, can play inside. I don't think that he's going to necessarily be somebody that comes in next season and has 1,000 yards receiving. but somebody that's familiar with the scheme and the offense, familiar with his coaches, and somebody that adds depth and could be a solid player for you. So
Yeah.
good pickup. Again, on the heels of a Christian Hamilton, a Smith Brown, these are players that you can plug in that do little the intangibles for you that I think could be a fine player for West Virginia.
Yeah. Jonathan, I was thinking as you were talking, what are your thoughts on the fact that the last several receivers Coach Rodriguez has brought in has played primarily wideout in their careers? I think that tells me that he feels pretty darn good. Now, it doesn't mean, like we've said, it doesn't mean these guys can't play the slot or won't be moved to the slot or do a little bit of both. But it shows me that I think he's pretty comfortable, or more comfortable rather, with what he has in the slot than maybe what he has at wideout. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that, and I think you're going to see a ton of Rodney Gallagher.
Yep. Agreed.
Couz, I'd go back to when we first realized that Rich Rodriguez was coming to West Virginia. We talked about Jaheim White. We talked about Rodney Gallagher. Those two just screamed, and so I think they really feel comfortable with Rodney Gallagher and what they have in the slot. So, but again, these are guys that have played on the outside, but guys that have played some in the slot as well. And take somebody like McCants, again, probably not going to wow you with numbers, and that's okay. But he is somebody that Rich Rodriguez feels like he can trust, that grew in the program at Jacksonville State. And if he needs some additional depth on the inside, he has it there. So, I think it's a comfortable feeling for him. But I think he's excited about what specifically somebody like Gallagher provides.
Yep. And we've also heard good things about Oren. Well, I think they call him Man Singleton, the slot receiver that they brought in the first portal window.
Yeah,
we've heard good things about him. So I think they feel pretty good about what they have, and some other guys too, for that matter. But when you add, you got Cam Vaughn on the outside, who I think they're pretty confident in.
Oh yeah.
You've got Jaden Bray, who if he can stay healthy, I think they're confident in. But outside of that, who are you going to rely on? And I think what they're doing is going out and getting more of these guys like McCants, like Smith, or Smith Brown, and these other guys to try to. I mean, you need bodies in that receiver room, man, because you're going to be playing a lot of times 4 of these guys at a time, right?
Yeah.
So when you have guys go down, you got to have somebody just fill in, and plus you need competition day in, day out. So I like these additions.
And we screamed to the hills, Couz, last year. You just can't run sweeps and reverses with Gallagher. And every time it seemed like he was given an opportunity, he was productive. But you go back to the first wave of the portal. Oren Singleton comes over. Jared Bowie, who is somebody that's interesting at that.
Yep.
Cyrus Trow. I think. Yeah. Again, I think from Youngstown State, somebody so they've got options. Right. But when you look on the outside, that's where I'm interested to see how this plays out. Cam Vaughn, I think we would both agree, really excited about him. 6'2", almost 200 pounds. But when you look at somebody like Christian Hamilton, Justin Smith Brown, Jaden Bray, what are you getting here? Right? I can give you reasons why I think that there's going to be some success, and I think I can give you some reasons why there's a little bit of hesitancy with these guys. I'd also throw Preston Fox in the mix.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about him, man. How could I forget about P. Fox?
Well, he kind of left and then reappeared. So I think what Rich is doing, if you'll look at the trend here, Couz, on the offensive line at the receiver position, I think he's trying to get enough bodies that he can pluck and play at different spots. And let's just kind of see how it plays out. But there's a lot of talent in the receiver room. But if we're being honest, Couz, there's some question marks as well. And so are some of these questions going to be answered? I'm really excited to see Jaden Bray. 6'2", 205, 210. When he first came in from Oklahoma State, we were thrilled about what we saw in spring practice, fall camp. We were really excited about him. And then there were some injuries there, and then maybe some questions about some practice and whatnot. But probably the best thing for Jaden Bray is a clean slate here with the new system.
Agreed.
New coaches. Maybe he's the one that performs, but I see a lot of guys with a lot of talent, a lot of opportunities, some question marks. But you just get the feeling that between several of these 3, 4, 5 guys that's coming in, somebody's going to step up.
Agreed. And you know, another one we hadn't mentioned, I'm assuming he's still planning to come, is Jeffrey Weimer from Idaho State.
Yep. Yep.
He's another one
Absolutely.
that I
Absolutely.
really like him, and he's put up gaudy numbers at Idaho State.
Yeah.
I
Another
don't.
big receiver,
Yeah.
6'2",
Yep.
205, 210. Absolutely. Good call.
Great hands. I think I think he might be a dark horse in that room this year. Not
Yeah.
saying he's going to be the top guy, but I do think he's somebody to
Agreed.
watch.
Agreed.
Assuming he sticks around, which I actually want to ask you about a guy we lost that we haven't touched on. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll talk about the big one, the big commit. What were your thoughts on Will Reed decommitting from West Virginia? And that, for those who don't know, that's the offensive lineman that was supposed to be coming over from Princeton.
Yeah. You know, I think he could have helped. I think he could have been productive. It's hard for me, because if I'm just being honest, it's hard for me to lose sleep on somebody that never showed up.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what it's difficult for me to look at what I think we would have had there, and transition that into what could have been, because it just never materialized. I hate it in a sense that I think he could have been a solid player at West Virginia, but when I look at some of the guys that are coming in, I think West Virginia has moved rather quickly. And so I can say this based off of who West Virginia has brought in, who they're beginning to bring in, and then who they're bringing in the coming days, in the coming weeks. I don't anticipate much of an issue getting quality offensive linemen to come into the program.
Agreed.
Hate that it didn't materialize, because I think that Will could have been a good player at West Virginia.
Yeah, and he had impressive tape. I really liked it. I thought he had a really impressive tape. But again, something there just didn't jive. Maybe he had a change of heart. Maybe the staff had a change of heart. We don't know. Either way, you know, he's being replaced by guys who have Power 4 ready bodies, who have Power 4 experience in a lot of cases. So maybe not as much experience as Will Reed as far as number of snaps and years, but they've been doing it against better competition. So I think that does matter. But again, at the end of the day, the time will tell, and we'll know how good these guys are once we see them on the field.
And as more and more time went on, and more players became available in the portal, not saying this was completely one-sided here, but it does leave that door open for, well, maybe such and such might be a better fit within our program.
Yep.
So I don't want to say the writing was on the wall, but the more time went on, it left the door open.
Yep. Great point. All right, let's go ahead and jump. This is really the one this one just happened today, actually. We're doing this live show on Monday night, April 28th. This commit happened, my understanding. Keep in mind, I was in Western time zone for most of the week, so I might have my day screwed up here. But Jalen Knighton, is my understanding, committed today. The running back from SMU. I had heard he was visiting. I think most of us knew he was visiting. But the fact that we already I will talk about this once we get past the stats and everything, Jonathan. But what's intriguing to me here is you bring in a guy like Jalen Knighton, who's got over 1,200 snaps in his career at both Miami and SMU, a guy who had a season 2 years ago where he ran for over 700 yards, if I'm not mistaken, at SMU, which at the time was in the American Conference. A guy who can come in and play right now. Who, by all accounts, is a huge pickup. But don't we already have a guy on the roster who's pretty darn good named Jaheim White? So I'm a little bit confused here as to what the plan is with Jaheim. But anyway, over 1,200 snaps in his career for Knighton at both Miami and SMU. PFF grade over 70, 3 years in a row. He didn't get that last year, but he only played a couple of games. He ended up missing most of the season with an injury last year. So, but when he has played, he's produced. That's the bottom line with this young man. That's really all you need to know. Do you want to get a little bit deeper into the numbers? And then I want to hear your thoughts on how's he going to work. You know, is this going to be more like a 1-2 punch deal like they had with CJ, do you think? or do you think it's, hey, we're competing here for see who the number one guy is? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
First off, I'll say I love the pickup, and I probably owe you an apology for texting you about it maybe about mid nap after a cross country flight
Oh,
back home, because this is one. So Couz didn't get a whole lot of rest probably whenever I was texting about Jalen Knight, but this is somebody that was worth the wake up, maybe if we could word it like that. Yeah, it's an interesting case, Couz. One, I'll say he went on the field, extremely proven. 2023 was extremely productive, 745 yards. You talked about that, 7 touchdowns. One thing I really loved, 5.5 yards per carry. So he's making hay when he's got the football. But prior to that, 3 seasons at Miami, 27 total games, almost 1,200 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns. In 2021, he actually led Miami in rushing as a sophomore, 561 yards. There are some concerns, though, here. A knee injury last year, only appeared in 3 games. One must assume that Rich Rodriguez and the medical staff and the coaches there feel good about it. So the question for me is, what are you going to get with Knighton? Can he duplicate 2020, 2021, 2023?
Yep.
Is he fully healthy?
Yep.
There's a question there. Again, I believe they feel comfortable. The talent 100% there. 5'10", 185, a good combination of speed. Honestly, reminds you a little bit of Jaheim. He's got a good combination of speed, good combination of some strength, catches the football well out of the backfield. The biggest question here for me is talent, not a question. Health is the question.
Yeah.
So we'll see going forward just how healthy he is. But to answer your question about how does he fit in, I think it's a combination. It's a 1-2 punch with Jaheim.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Dior Hubbard in the running back room who is unproven. A Ty Edwards who I think we love, but that young man's big. He's a bruiser. I don't know that he's going to much give you side to side athleticism, but he's just going to plow you. He's going to run over you. Very talented, and I'm not trying to neglect some of his skill set, but just a different player than Jaheim and Knighton. So I think you feel really good about the room, but the question becomes, Edwards is new in the program. What do I have here on the step up? Hubbard, no snaps, essentially productive snaps in the program. Jaheim White's going to need a break. And so I actually love this pickup because I think it's extremely talented, and it gives you that extra 1-2 punch.
Yep.
And then if you threw Edwards in there, there's a lot to like in that running back room.
Curtis D says lightning, thunder, then lightning again.
Yeah.
Those 3 guys.
Yeah.
Talking about, I'm assuming he's talking about, White, then Edwards, and then Knighton, right?
Yeah.
Now, Knighton is he's a little taller, a little slimmer than Jaheim. Jaheim's a thicker, his bigger legs, bigger thighs. He's going to probably do a little bit better at running through people and get him a lower pad level and all that. But man, Knighton can flat out fly, and he's going to give you that really small, shifty guy that can flat out fly and outrun people. Not that Jaheim can't do that too. That's what's great about it. You've got 2 guys who are really athletic, really fast, and can just make people miss and make plays. And that's what I love about it. And you can't ever, in a Rich Rod offense, man, you can't have too many good running backs. I mean, you just can't. I mean, We've seen what he was able to do with Slayton and Devine, with, what he did with, Quincy Wilson. Just go through the other backs that he's had throughout his career, even at other stops. I mean, he's had really, really good running backs at almost every single stop. And I think it's just going to continue here. So if there's one coach in America who I definitely trust to evaluate running backs, it's Rich Rodriguez. Trust me.
Yeah. The room is it's a good running back room. You take Edwards at just 230 plus pounds and you mix in the speed, the athleticism. Hubbard's a guy that I actually really like, Couz, but as a redshirt freshman, you just you don't quite know what you have here. But if you can put him behind a Jaheim and behind a Jalen Knight and even an Edwards, let him learn. But again, you said it. You can never have enough. I don't know, barring a departure, it probably closes the door, you would think, maybe on the running back room. You always could have a potential walk on or something there. But I think this is a good pickup, and I think it just adds. Rich Rod probably has an idea on how he wants to use all three, if not four of these guys in a different role. And one thing we know is that Rich Rodriguez has always had a quality running back.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at this room, it looks like he's got several. So interesting to see how he uses them.
Yep, agreed. I'm excited to see how he uses them, to be honest, because it's going to be interesting. Like you said, if Knight can stay healthy, think about this. If Jalen Knight can stay healthy, you get a great 1-2 punch with him and White. If Jaden Bray can stay healthy, you get Jaden Bray, Cam Vaughn, you get Rodney Gallagher. If all those guys can pan out, and then you get really good quarterback play from either Nico or Henderson, whoever ends up winning the job. As long as that offensive line, that is just the one huge glaring question mark to me, is that offensive line. I really like what Coach Rod and staff are doing at the skill position. I like what they're doing on offensive line too. It's just harder for me. Maybe it's because I didn't play the position. I don't know. But for me, it's harder to gauge offensive line, especially when you have so many guys, so many new guys, right?
That's the biggest question for me, Couz, is you've got so many.
Yeah.
The turnover on the offensive line, while I think you've got a lot of talented prospects, again, I'd go back to what I said earlier. I've got a lot of questions. You just look at the additions, and I'm probably going to miss somebody, but Tykees Crawford. Xavier Bosley is a guy that came in, but then is still relatively new. Michael Clay, Young Bear, Agbo, Asosa. You could even say Robbie Martin, who's new in the program. And the list just goes on, and they're not finished because they're going to continue to bring players in.
McConaughey from LSU.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one. And they're just going to continue to bring guys in. So how it all sorts out, I'm not quite sure. But I think the talent is there when you take and earlier I said, you look at guys that are 1 year. Crawford, 1 year. Clay, 1 year left. Young Bear, 1 year. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name for LSU. I think he's 1 year. So you've got a lot of guys with just 1 year left. You got a lot of guys that are going to come in for one last ride, and we'll see how it shakes out.
But one thing I can guarantee about those guys is every one of those, because they do only have 1 year, most of them. What are they going to come in expecting to do? They're going to come in wanting to play, but they're going to have to compete for it. So they're going to play their butts off, compete their butts off, which is going to make everybody on that line and on the team better. So that's one reason one positive you can take from that is all these new guys, they want to finish their last year in college on the field, right? They don't want to finish it on the bench because they're not getting to play. But they're going to have to win the job, and they're going to compete their butts off to do it. And I think it's a good strategy.
And again, West Virginia is not going to get every offensive lineman that comes in for visits, but there's more and more coming. And said them earlier, a Carson Lee from Mississippi State going visiting, Will Osteen from Jacksonville State.
Who's very highly sought after,
coming, and I think very highly sought after. So
they've
even got a young man, Jalen Caldwell. Yeah, Jalen Caldwell, Grand Valley State, another one, offensive lineman that a lot of programs are looking at right now. So I'm not going to kid you that I know the plan, other than I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's just get as many quality bodies as you can, add depth at the position. They all want to play. Let's get to work and see how it shakes out.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's exciting to see what Coach Rod and staff are doing. I mean, in this last portal cycle, you're seeing more Power 4 names, and that always makes the fan base feel better. Whether the guys end up being any good or not, we don't know. But at least on the surface, it makes us feel better to see those Power 4 schools beside their name, right? And then we're seeing more of those. And again, we're seeing guys with size on the O-line. And when it comes to the skill positions, we're seeing guys with speed. And I think that's what you like to see.
Couz, another receiver, Isaiah Spencer. Remember that, Jackson State. Another one that could be in the mix, going to be visiting soon. You talk about speed, is another one of those guys that plays outside, plays inside. So it looks like what Rich Rodriguez and his staff is doing is getting as many quality guys they think can play, and let's see how it shakes out.
Agreed. All right, let me see. I did see, this is off topic, but I haven't seen people talking about the concerts and stuff. I have seen Godsmack about 4 or 5 times, maybe more than that, in concert. They are definitely one of my favorite live bands. For those of you who may not know, their guitarist and their drummer have actually retired, so they're now touring with a new guitarist and a new drummer. Just a little nugget of information. When I started this channel, my goal was to make it a music and sports channel, and then I realized YouTube doesn't work that way. You got to niche down. If I'm ever able to do YouTube full time, I will probably start a separate channel where I do nothing but talk about rock and roll music, because I love it. It's another passion I have. My wife and I, we go to multiple concerts a year. We've seen over 100 bands live in concert in the rock metal genre. So it's kind of another passion of mine. So anywho,
I can say you all were talking complete foreign language to me. I'm more of a George Strait kind of guy, so
I like some of that too, though. That's cool.
You
That's
all
what's
were
cool
talking.
about it. Yeah.
You guys were talking some bands that it's foreign to me.
Yeah, I get it. It's not for everybody, but I like a little country too. I've went and seen, I like a little Morgan Wallen, a little George Strait, a little Chris Stapleton. Matter of fact, I got tickets to see Chris Stapleton later this year. So
there you go.
That's probably more your speed, isn't it, Jonathan?
More your language. I'm a country guy.
Yeah,
I'm a country music guy.
Yeah,
but I'm a little bit of an old school country music guy, because I love 80s and 90s country. So I'm old school country, believe it or not.
Yeah, my future son-in-law actually he kind of digs that kind of music too. So that kind of music is still alive and well, I think.
Yep.
All right, let's talk a little hoops, Jonathan, before we call it a night, shall we?
Yep.
All this going on with football, it's been kind of quiet on the basketball front, and one name that kind of slipped. I don't know how you want to look at it. Maybe slipped through West Virginia's fingers. West Virginia fans were extremely confident. As a matter of fact, a very popular site out there, I can't remember the name of the site, but they usually track transfer portal players, and they actually predicted West Virginia would land Marcus Millender, the 5'10", 5'11" guard from UTSA, and they didn't get him. He ended up committing to Georgia today.
Yep.
After taking visits to multiple schools. Any idea in your mind, or do you have any idea what happened here? And if you don't have any idea, what is your theory? B, is it a big deal? And why is it so quiet in basketball right now?
So I'll answer those in reverse. Maybe I think it's kind of quiet because I think West Virginia, they got the key components to the roster. And I think what they're trying to do now is build around those components. Not trying to plug it, but I would encourage anybody watching to go back and watch the mailbag version of this show while you're on vacation, because I actually talked about this. I talked about how the basketball team kind of has their core pieces right now. Not that everybody's not important, but the program has their core pieces at all positions. And so I think what Ross Hodge is trying to do right now is to find guys that can incorporate into this group, and now you can make this team whole. So I think it's a little quiet just because they made such a rush on getting guys, and it just kind of flooded. And now I think it's more of just been patient, seeing who fits. Not quite sure what happened with Smurf Millender. I will say this, and I even again noted on that show, I was extremely curious to see how Ross Hodge was going to incorporate another 5'10" guard into the mix with Honor Huff been what by all accounts maybe the starting shooting guard. I was curious to see how that was going to work. I didn't hate it, but I was curious to see how that was going to work. So I'm not too awful upset at this. I think there's a couple other options that West Virginia can go. I think right now you have just entered into the patient stage. So I don't hate that they missed out on Millender. Um, I tell you, I feel like I have just harped on it for weeks. Braden Hawthorne is a guy that I would just love to see West Virginia be able to finish the deal here. I'm not quite sure. His recruitment is extremely interesting to me in the sense of West Virginia still remained involved. Kentucky got involved. Everybody thought Hawthorne was going to go to Virginia Tech and follow Chester Frazier. Guess what? He visited. He didn't commit. There was reporting last night that he was potentially going to go to Pitt, of all places, on a visit. And then it came out today that he's actually going to take an official visit to Duke this weekend. Because I've been screaming to anybody that'll listen, this young man is about as talented could get. And now he's going to be on an official visit to Duke. So on one end, I like to say that that's probably going to close the deal, and that book's going to close. But again, it's somebody that went to Kentucky,
Yeah,
and he didn't commit. It's just like every week it's somebody new. But I think West Virginia is a little bit in the wait and see stage right now about just filling out the roster.
yeah. My take on Braden Hawthorne is I think with every visit, West Virginia's chances get a little slimmer, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like if he was really, he's an in-state kid. So if he was dead set on going to West Virginia and that was really where he wanted to be, he'd have already committed. That's just my opinion. A total opinion on my part. Because that's kind of how it usually works, at least in the past, especially a kid who's from West Virginia. But at the same time, I also can see the kid's point of view. We're like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of this, man. How many times in my life do I get to go visit Duke and Kentucky and all these other major universities? And I might as well do it. Might as well go through the process and see what they have for me, and see I may fall in love with one of those places. And maybe in the back of his mind, he knows West Virginia is a fallback plan for him. I know West Virginia staff wouldn't want to hear that, but I'm this is probably something he wouldn't say out loud, but in his mind, he's thinking, okay, I can always fall back to West Virginia if Duke or one of these other schools just aren't a fit, right? Maybe that's his mindset. But as you get more and more of these blue blood programs reaching out to this young man and getting him on their campuses, I just think West Virginia's odds continue to go down. But as far as Smurf Millender goes, I'm with you. When you look at what Coach Hodge wants to do defensively, I honestly didn't think it made a lot of sense to have two guys under 6 foot tall.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying they couldn't do it. It couldn't be done, and neither one of them would work. Because I think my understanding, they both play good defense as well. But length matters, especially with what he wants to do and the defense he likes to play, that no middle defense. Length, I mean, it matters in every defense, to be honest. But, cutting off passing lanes.
But it would make things –
all that stuff is really,
it
really
would make
important.
things challenging.
Yeah, it would. So I'm with you. I think it – and if I'm Smurf Millender and I'm looking at this going, wait a minute, he's already got a guy in my position. And that guy's probably making – rumors out there are that he's getting paid a pretty big chunk of change that they can't give me now. So why don't I just go somewhere else that I can fill that role that I would have played at West Virginia? I think that's probably, in my mind, that's probably how this is working out for him, which is fine because I think it's going to work out good for both parties in the end.
Yeah, but I would just advise people to not panic about the lack of additions. You weren't going to fill your roster within 30 days. I mean, it was going to take a little bit of time, and I just felt like if you look from point guard to center, they got the core pieces to the roster, and now they're just plucking guys in that they feel can be. Can fit the program, can fit the culture, can fit the mindset of what they're wanting to do in year one. But yeah, I was curious to see how Millender was going to fit. Ideally, it was a little confusing having both of those guys, him and Honor Huff, and then they both performed more at the shooting guard position, and then you take point guard. Mm-hmm. So I was curious how it was going to work. I didn't hate it because I was going to trust Ross Hodge had a plan, had an idea. But What happened, I don't quite know. Interesting thing about right now, and I'd even say the same thing with Hawthorne, is that you never know the conversations behind the scenes. Look, West Virginia could say, hey, young man, listen, we'd love to have you. We're probably going to save a spot for another 30, 45, 60 days. Take every visit you want. It's fine. I encourage it. You don't need it, but you have our blessing on it. But we're going to save a spot for about 45, 60 days, and let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know about what happens behind the scenes there, but he's a player that I think would fit. But then I also think if it's a little that power forward, small forward position's kind of filling up a little bit for West Virginia too. So
Yeah.
Not sure. I would personally make room, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know exactly the fit is ideal at the moment.
I got you. WVU's Life has a good comment here regarding Hawthorne. He says, and how much is Duke or Kentucky going to pay for a kid and take a chance? Duke has the Boozer twins coming in and another number one class and people that came back. He will ride the pine.
And there's validity there. I would just say that, and I'm not. I want to be careful because I'm not saying Hawthorne is one of these, but there are some that just say, "Hey, it's okay. What's my value worth?"
Yep.
How much money they have, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine programs do. Kentucky, they got a lot of cash to spend. So we'll see where it goes. He could commit to Duke this weekend, but we kind of had the same vibes when he elected to take the visit to Kentucky as well. So, and I will say that on the same day that it came out that he was going to visit today, Kentucky or Duke just picked up one of the top kids in the transfer portal, a forward from Washington State. So how much bearing does that have? So Hawthorne has a little bit of leverage, but with every passing day, it fades just a little bit as spots fill up.
Yeah, and you think too with the NIL money that's being floated, numbers that have been floated around out there that West Virginia is paying Honor Huff and Grayson Trayson Eagle staff. Maybe they didn't have as much money for him, right, as what he may have been asking for. I don't know. There's just so, and again, this is all a theory. I'm not trying to say the young man's money chasing a bag. That wasn't my intent there, but it's got to play into the equation. I mean, that's the world we live in, right? So it'd be naive to ignore it. But one comment I did want to make before we get off this topic and close the show is back to the patience topic about why it's been so quiet around the basketball program. I think, the few times I have looked at social media the last few days, I've noticed that it looks like they're focusing too on hiring staff a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they've got, like you said, they've got the core pieces on the roster that they need. Now they're focusing on getting their staff built and getting those announced, and then letting those folks go, do their jobs and go recruit. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what they're.
Yeah. And I will say as well, Couz, and I cannot believe that I have forgotten the name. Pardon me for this, but they do have a visit set up with a kid who was committed to Xavier. 4-star kid, 6'5", 6'6", shooting guard, small forward, that's going to be coming in. So we'll see how that goes. So there is some work going on. But I think you're just in you talk about the NIL money. West Virginia has spent a lot reportedly, and there is about another 3 or 4 players that you've got to continue to add. So you're going to kind of get in the budget portion here of allotment of what you can spend for 3 or 4 players. So you're going to be a little bit more selective right now.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think we would both agree, Couz, that he has knocked the portal out of the park in year one.
I think so. I think so.
Unbelievable job by him.
Agreed. Appalachia Africa Twin, thank you so much for the $20 donation, man. You're always a supporter. I appreciate that. He says, thanks for the hard work, Couz and Jonathan. Here's a top shelf shot for you, gentlemen. Hashtag hard edge. Hashtag hard edge, man, and we appreciate the support. Really means a ton to us. WVU does need a center. Agreed. They do need one more big. I'd like to see him get one more solid point guard. I know Tracy Eagle staff can play point guard, but I'd really rather him be off the ball as much as possible. So I'd like to see him go get one more pure point guard to go with Jasper Floyd, maybe. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think center. We learned that last year. Center is a
Yeah.
position that I think they're going to get. They're going to get active, and so yeah, probably need another point guard. Jasper Floyd's going to be more primarily in that point guard role, so you're going to need somebody there. I will say that I actually see the comment from Matthew Forsyth. That's the young man that committed to Xavier that's coming in for a visit. So Matthew, appreciate you throwing that name in there. But yeah, point guard. A center, obviously, you need a big, have to.
Agreed. Another good comment here by Stanley Metz I want to address too. It says, talking about Braden Hawthorne, he thinks it's probably 50-50 on Hawthorne now that Hunter Huff is committed. But he thinks that now that all these Blue Bloods are interested, that the longer he waits, it may actually bode well for West Virginia because the Blue Bloods are not going to want to wait. The Blue Bloods are probably going to be less likely to wait around a long time for him to make a decision than West Virginia would be. So it may actually bode well for West Virginia in his mind if it does take a while. That's actually a pretty interesting and not a bad way to look at it, really.
Just don't go to Pitt.
Yeah, please don't. Oh, I really would say don't go to Virginia Tech, but the fact that Chester Frazier's there, I have a hard time saying that, because I understand the connection. But Pitt would be, Pitt.
Oh,
Yeah, that would be bad.
that's tough.
That young man would get a lot of harassment, unfortunately, if that happens.
Yeah.
And Tosh Miller, that's a fair point. He thinks Hawthorne is too skinny to play a lot right now. Maybe. I don't know. I've seen some pretty skinny guys play really good basketball.
Yeah, he's just so athletic, so long, so athletic. I think he's going to be tremendous. Obviously, needs to get a little stronger, but athleticism can make up for a lot.
Yeah,
and his wingspan is unbelievable. I think he could be. I think he could be a really good player anywhere he goes. Now, you take him somewhere to like Duke, Kentucky. I will say that I don't know that there's as much immediate playing time as if he were to go to a West Virginia or even a Virginia Tech, somewhere like that. But we'll see how it pans out.
Yep. The Big Lubbock says, I heard Joseph Alderade, the rush in from Texas Tech, visited Morgantown over the weekend. He's a stud. I did hear about that. That would be a huge pickup for the Mountaineers if they can land Joseph Adadare. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but anyway, Adadare, but I guess Adadare, I bet.
Yeah, and another one who is going to continue to take some visits. Did visit Morgantown, kind of like Knight at running back. Missed some time last season because of some injury. There's a couple players, Couz, and this is going to kind of go around in a circle here, but Adare is one. Jaden McDonald, a linebacker from Virginia Tech, coming in, missed some time at Virginia Tech because of injury. So what you're seeing now is a combination of some players at different positions that maybe missed some time but are now fully healthy and starting to look around. So, yeah, that would be a good pickup from Texas Tech. But he's going to visit some other schools as well. But Jaden McDonald, a linebacker from Tech, it seems like Tech's taking every football player from West Virginia. They owe us one. It seems like. But curious on him because he did miss some time last season. But when healthy, a very athletic linebacker. And, again, we haven't talked about that much tonight, but that's another position where West Virginia is looking to get more depth and more athleticism in that room.
Yeah. Yep, agreed. Michelle Weintraub says Hawthorne may not pick WVU now, but may end up at WVU later on. That's a good point with the portal.
Yep.
Someone in the comments said they don't understand how anybody from West Virginia could go to any other school. I'm kind of that way too, to a degree, son of Skeeter. But we got to realize that not every kid goes up cheering for West Virginia like we do. Some kids grow up cheering for. I heard an interview with Jalen. He played basketball at West Virginia, transferred to Baylor. Jalen Bridges. I heard an interview with him one time. He said, he said, I didn't grow up a West Virginia fan. So he said, somebody expected me to stay at West Virginia. He said, West Virginia was never my favorite team as a kid. And it would shock people because he only lived 30 minutes away, but I guess he was just being honest. But
And when you take a look at like Braden Hawthorne, who grew up in West Virginia but played primarily at Huntington Prep, who was more on the national stage, right, and
correct.
traveled a bit more, not diminishing or devaluing or saying that he doesn't care about West Virginia. I'd actually say this, Couz. I think there's been no secret from Braden Hawthorne that he puts a lot of stock into playing for West Virginia. You know, it's uncommon now whenever a player commits to a school or commits to a coach, essentially, and then there's a coaching change and that commit decommits, but continues to leave his option open and comes back to visit again. And Braden Hawthorne did that. He came back to visit with Ross Hodge, and so by all accounts, he's went about this the right way. And I think West Virginia is a legitimate option for him. I have no issues with him continuing to see what's out there, but I do think as days go on and spots fill up, I'd be a little bit careful.
Yeah.
But again, you never know what's going on behind the scenes about how much time some schools are saying, "Hey, I'll let you have," or "We're going to wait," or whatever it could be.
Yeah. The player you're talking about, WVU life, Tyrone Gilliard. I actually played against him in high school, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Defensive back, right?
Yeah, he was a safety at Pitt. He actually started for Pitt. He was a really good player.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, he sure was. He was 1 or 2 years behind me. He graduated around 2000, 2001 from Princeton. I was at Pikeview, so I played against him when he was at Princeton. They whipped our hind end. Multiple times actually. but my football, we were terrible when I was there, so no big shock. But yeah, and that was a surprise to a lot of people, I think, to see him go to Pitt. But again, not every kid grows up cheering for West Virginia. It's just I think us fans expect that, but it's just not the case. I think the majority do, but not all of them, because the majority of them have parents who were fans, right? Probably.
Yep.
So it's kind of how it works. But at the end of the day, especially now that it's turned into a business, okay, I might grow up cheering for West Virginia, but I'm being recruited by Alabama or Georgia or Pitt or whoever, right?
Yep.
And they're offering me a lot. They're offering me X amount of money versus this. You know, it's going to make that flying WV maybe a little bit less maybe less attractive, you know, than it might have would have been to people like us.
Yeah, and you never know everybody's circumstances. You know, Couz Princeton went through that this year with Daniel Jennings.
Yeah.
West Virginia won him. Now, obviously, with the coaching changes, that got a little bit out of whack. But Penn State. So it does happen, and all states are probably like this. But you take a look at West Virginia. You get the southern part of the state. You're so far away from Morgantown. You've got more of the southern schools. You've got Virginia Tech, which is a whole lot closer.
Yep.
Then you venture over into Cabell County, into Huntington, and gets out towards the Kentucky, the Louisville, the Notre Dames, the Ohios. So not everybody has. That's funny because me, obviously I'm not comparing myself, but I mean, if I were growing up in that, just our love for West Virginia, you don't almost think you go for free, right?
Right.
But times have changed. The landscape has changed. NIL is completely different with new, so who knows what would have happened.
You got parents now in the ear of the kids, and not saying that that's wrong. I mean, it's part of the process.
Yeah.
And like you said, you don't know a kid's situation. If a parent, maybe a kid sees a parent needs, maybe their parents are in not a great financial condition in certain cases, and they see, well, I can go to this school and help my parents out a lot more than I can at this one, right? So
yeah,
there are so many things at play that we as fans don't probably always take the time to think about in these situations, because it's hard for us to get past our fandom at times, And I'll admit that I'm the same way at times, but it's just part of the process. But I think we'd be remiss if we did not mention the baseball team. So thank you, Curtis D, for that reminder. Baseball team sweeps another series over the weekend against UCF. What's their record now, Jonathan?
37-5.
37-5. Where are they ranked now?
So there were multiple ones in baseball. I think I saw one today. Baseball America has them at 8th, I think it was. But there's a couple different ones out there. Let's take a look. They put it here. I had it on here. 13th, 16th, and 18th. So there's different rankings in college baseball, but yeah, moving up.
Yeah,
moving up.
Yep.
And that was a great series. UCF to sweep them on the road. There was a couple of those games that got a little chaotic. Had to come from behind. Some that got a lead early. I said the other night it was great to see my timeline on Twitter filled with West Virginia fans who were just you would have thought a football game was going on. They were into every pitch, every bad call. And man, you just absolutely love to see it. And yes, they play Marshall Wednesday in Charleston. Man, I would encourage it. Wish I could go. I'd make the quick hour-and-a-half trip up. I can't do that, unfortunately, but
I have to travel in a different opposite direction.
But that would be it's going to be beautiful. I think maybe Wednesday, at least down in this area. So, yeah, that's a good comment right there. West Virginia beat UCF the other night and had one hit.
And they've been beating people with their offense for the most part this year. I mean, not that their pitching's been bad, but their offense has just been explosive.
Yeah.
And they have a game where their offense isn't doing much, and they're able to still win a game. That shows you they're a good, balanced baseball team.
Yeah.
Now, I don't follow college baseball that closely, I'll admit. I don't know how good UCF is. I don't know how good. Am I wrong in saying that West Virginia has a favorable Big 12 schedule in baseball?
It's not as difficult, the RPI, as some other schools. That's kind of been the knock on West Virginia. When you start looking at their rankings, let me tell you something. The record speaks for themselves. You still have to win baseball games, and they're doing it at a very impressive rate. So UCF is a team that struggled in the Big 12 this season. Out of conference, they were good this year. Kind of have struggled a little bit more in conference. West Virginia's got a conference series coming up at home with Kansas to end the season. Now that's going to be one to watch. They're fighting with Kansas at the top of the Big 12.
Okay.
Then the big thing is you want to get that regional at home. If you can get that at home in Morgantown, that's going to be huge. West Virginia right on the cusp of getting that. But yeah, as a baseball guy, this huge Cincinnati Reds guy here. Mm-hmm. It's awesome to see this program continuing on after Mazey retired, everything that he did, to see the success they're having this year. Coaching change, J.J. Weatherholt drafted and leaves the program. They've just kept the ball rolling, and so really, really cool to see it.
Yeah. Great point, WVU's Life. He says WVU is the only northern school with a top 25 RPI. That's what makes what they're doing so impressive, because these southern schools, they play baseball year-round. West Virginia can't do that. They can't practice year-round outdoors. They can't play, these leagues or whatever, these off-season leagues and stuff year-round like these other schools do. And for them to be able to still play with these guys and beat a lot of them is pretty remarkable to me. Now, and this brand new indoor baseball facility that they just had built, that's going to change the game for them, in my opinion, and make it so where they can start doing more year-round stuff.
Yeah. That I would encourage you, if you've not been to Morgantown lately, if you make a trip up, go out by the baseball field, go to the stadium, look at what they're doing. The investment there, they just put up a new scoreboard. I think late last week or this weekend while the team was gone. Really impressive what they're doing. Excited to see this season wind down, regular season. It's just, and again, I kind of made a joke of it, but you would have thought WVU was playing Pitt in football the other night. Man, it was everybody was on the edge of their seat, locked into their keypad as they were typing. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it is cool. I like it. Well, listen, I appreciate everybody's participation tonight in the chat. Again, if you're watching on X, please be sure to go over and check out the YouTube channel, Couz's Corner. Please subscribe. Please turn on your notifications so you'll be notified of future uploads when we go live, when we have pre-recorded shows that pop up. It'll notify you if you have your notification turned on, and click the notification bell, underneath this video. Also, check us out on X at Couz206, at Jonathan K. Martin. It's Jonathan, as you see on the screen, it's Jonathan with no H in the front. We ask you to please check out our GB Breakdown _ page as well over on X. And don't forget the Golden Blue Breakdown show that we do weekly right here. Usually uploads around Thursday at noon or somewhere in or around that time. So be on the lookout for that. We appreciate everybody hopping on here. Thanks again to Jonathan for holding the fort down for me while I took a much needed vacation. Thanks again to our sponsors, Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, your personal injury and medical malpractice attorneys in West Virginia and Virginia, and Appalachia Digital, the fine folks who designed our brand new website, who would also like to design your new website for you when you're ready to build that brand new site, or if you want to get found on Google, go check them out. AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. Everybody hit the like button, please. As Chris mentioned in the comments, thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day or a great night. Hope the rest of your day is top shelf and Q Country Roads.